Hey everyone, welcome back. We know you're all about maximizing your knowledge, getting those key insights without all the noise.
Absolutely.
So today, we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, the global bioplastic textile market.
Sounds good.
We've been poring over this recent report, just packed with data, market sizes, projections, you name it, it's all in there.
Yeah, it's really comprehensive. It's a great overview of where this whole industry is heading.
Yeah, especially that shift away from the traditional fabrics, the ones that rely on petroleum towards these greener options.
Exactly.
So our mission today, if you choose to accept it, is to pull out the most important stuff, the things you really need to know about this market.
Yeah, let's break it down.
So first things first, how big is this bioplastic textile market and where is it going?
Okay, so let's start with the snapshot of where we are right now in 2025. The global market is estimated at about 1.08 billion US dollars.
All right, 1.08 billion, got it. But what about the future? What's the report predicting?
Now, here's where it gets interesting. By 2033, just 8 years from now, they're forecasting this market to hit nearly 2.19 billion US dollars.
Whoa, that's almost double.
It is. It's a big jump.
So what's driving that kind of growth? What's pushing this market forward so strongly?
Well, at its core, it's really down to consumers like you and me.
Okay,
People all over the world are becoming way more aware of the impact of their choices,
right.
particularly when it comes to things like, fast fashion,
Makes sense.
the environmental impact of traditional textiles. Those are all factors.
Yeah.
And that desire for, let's say, greener options, that's what's fueling this huge expansion in the bioplastics market,
Right, yeah. I mean, we're all thinking more about where our clothes come from these days.
for sure.
So speaking of where things come from, let's look at the regional breakdown. Who are the major players in this market geographically?
Okay, so in 2025, North America is leading the pack. They hold over 40% of the global market share.
Wow, North America's out in front. So how much are we talking about in dollars?
Yeah, so that translates to roughly 276.49 million US dollars.
Okay, and what about their future prospects? Are they going to stay on top?
Yeah, the report predicts continued growth for North America at a pretty solid rate, around 7.8% per year, all the way to 2033.
So steady growth for North America. Now, within North America, are there any particular countries that stand out?
Definitely. The U.S. is by far the biggest player, with a projected market size of about 218.15 million US dollars in 2025.
Okay, the U.S. is number one. Who else is up there?
Next comes Canada at about 33.18 million, and then Mexico with around 25.16 million. And, the report really emphasizes that this growth is being driven by a strong consumer preference for sustainable products.
Right, yeah. It seems like consumers in those countries are really demanding eco-friendly solutions.
For sure.
All right, so that's North America. What about Europe? What's the bioplastic textile scene like over there?
Well, Europe's the second largest market globally.
Okay.
They're holding over 30% of the market share in 2025.
So still a significant player. What's their market size?
Their market size is estimated at about 542.13 million US dollars.
All right. And are they expected to keep pace with North America in terms of growth?
Yeah, their growth rate's looking really healthy, around 8.6% per year, all the way to 2033.
So Europe's not slowing down anytime soon. Now, are there any particular European countries that are really driving this growth?
We're seeing quite a bit of activity across several key European countries.
Okay.
The UK is projected to be at about 91.08 million US dollars in 2025.
All right.
Germany's actually leading the pack in Europe with a projected market size of about 107.34 million.
Okay.
Then we have France at around 49.88 million, Italy at about 46.62 million, and Russia with a projected market size of about 84.03 million.
Wow, Russians up there too.
Yeah, they are. And then Spain rounds out the group with about 44.45 million.
So a pretty diverse spread across Europe. But what's driving that growth in particular? Is it the same consumer demand we're seeing in North America?
Consumer demand is definitely a factor, but in Europe, what's really interesting is the influence of government policies and initiatives.
Oh.
They have a lot of sustainability initiatives and regulations that are specifically designed to promote eco-friendly alternatives. Things like regulations around waste and promoting a circular economy. These create a real demand for materials like bioplastics.
Right, yeah. So those regulatory tailwinds are really helping push things forward in Europe.
Absolutely.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about Asia. We always hear about how fast the Asian market is growing in so many sectors. Is bioplastic textiles following that trend?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The Asia-Pacific region, APAC, currently holds about 23% of the global market.
Okay, so a decent chunk already.
In 2025, Their market size is projected to be around 162.64 million US dollars. But here's the really exciting part.
I'm intrigued.
Their projected growth rate is a whopping 12.3% per year.
Wow, 12.3%. That's incredible. That's by far the fastest growing region we've talked about.
Yeah, APAC has really taken off in this market.
So which countries are leading the charge in APAC?
China's the dominant player there, no surprise. Their projected market size in 2025 is about 68.31 million US dollars.
Okay, China's number one, as usual. Who else is in the mix?
After China, we have Japan at around 22.44 million, South Korea at 19.52 million, India at 16.26 million, and Australia with about 8.46 million.
So a pretty good mix of developed and developing economies in there. What's fueling that incredible growth rate in APAC?
Well, it's a few things, really. There's rapid industrialization happening in many of these countries, which means more manufacturing.
Okay.
But there's also a growing awareness of environmental issues among consumers in the region, and we're also seeing increasing government support for sustainable industries.
So a perfect storm of factors coming together to create that explosive growth.
You got it.
All right, so we've covered North America, Europe, and APAC. What about the rest of the world? South America, the Middle East, and Africa. Where do they fit in?
Good question. South America holds a bit over 5% of the global market, with a size of about 32.53 million US dollars in 2025, and they're expected to grow at a healthy 10.1% annually.
All right, not too shabby.
Brazil and Argentina are the key players there. Then we have the Middle East, accounting for around 2% of the market, with a size of about 43.37 million US dollars and a growth rate of 10.5%.
Okay, so still in the game.
Definitely. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are leading the way in that region. And finally, we have Africa, currently holding around 1% of the market at 27.11 million US dollars, but with a really solid growth projection of 10.3%.
All right, so Africa is definitely on the rise as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And South Africa is the most significant market in that region. One thing that's interesting across these regions is that we're seeing increasing environmental awareness, and in some cases, government regulations are starting to play a role in driving demand for these bioplastic textiles.
It's fascinating to see how these global trends are playing out differently in each region. Some areas are really sprinting ahead, while others are just starting to gain momentum. All right, so we've talked about the overall market size and the regional breakdown, but let's dig a little deeper into the materials themselves. What are these bioplastic textiles actually made of?
Okay, so the report highlights polytrimethylene terephthalate, or PTT, as the current leader in terms of material usage.
PTT, okay. I'll admit I'm not familiar with that one.
It might sound a bit technical, but essentially it's a bio-based alternative that offers some really great qualities.
Like what?
It's durable, it's got good elasticity, it's stain resistant, and importantly, it can be made from renewable sources, things like corn glucose.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not coming from petroleum.
Exactly. And those qualities make it a really attractive option for things like apparel and home textiles, where you need something that's both high-performing and has a lower environmental impact.
So PTT is the big player right now. Are there any other bioplastic materials we should be aware of?
Absolutely. Polyamide, often referred to as PA, is highlighted as the fastest growing bioplastic material in this sector.
Okay, PA, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty versatile stuff. It's strong. It can be used in a lot of different applications. And what's really driving its growth is that we're seeing more and more bio-based versions of PA coming onto the market. These are derived from renewable sources, which makes them even more appealing. So it's becoming increasingly popular for clothing and even industrial textiles.
So PA is one to watch for the future.
Definitely. And the report also mentions a couple of other materials like PET, which is something you're probably familiar with from plastic bottles, and PLA, polylactic acid, which is often made from things like cornstarch or sugarcane.
All right, so a good range of materials to choose from. Now let's talk about applications. Where are we actually seeing these bioplastic textiles being used? What kind of products are they going into?
Right now, the dominant application is home textiles, things like bed linens, curtains, upholstery.
Okay, that makes sense.
Consumers are really looking for greener options for their homes. However, the report says that clothing is the application area with the most rapid growth potential.
Really, clothing is growing faster than home textiles.
Yeah, it seems to be.
That's interesting. What's driving that trend?
It really boils down to consumer demand. People are actively looking for clothing made from more sustainable and eco-conscious materials.
Like what?
We're talking plant-based fabrics, even algae-derived fabrics, And it's not just those niche eco-friendly brands anymore. We're starting to see major fashion players incorporating these bioplastic textiles into their lines, which is really helping to fuel that growth.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see that shift in the fashion industry,
Definitely.
especially since they've often been criticized for their environmental impact.
For sure. And footwear is another application where we're starting to see more bioplastics being used.
Okay, so from our homes to our wardrobes, it seems like bioplastic textiles are making their mark.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the sources of these bioplastics. Where are they actually coming from? What are the main renewable sources being used?
So sugarcane is playing a really big role here, especially as a source for PLA.
Sugarcane. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a great source. Bioplastics derived from sugarcane offer that key benefit of biodegradability. They break down naturally, which is fantastic.
Right.
And using sugarcane also helps reduce the overall carbon footprint compared to traditional plastics. So it's a really attractive option for those in the textile industry who are looking to minimize their environmental impact.
So our clothes could potentially be coming from sugar fields. That's a pretty cool thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there other plant-based sources that are being used?
Oh, definitely. Beet is another rapidly growing source for bioplastics used in textiles.
Beet, like the root vegetable.
It's the very same.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And what's great about beet-derived bioplastics is that they offer a good balance of things.
Like what?
Sustainability and biodegradability, of course, but also those practical qualities that we need in textiles, things like durability, flexibility, even comfort.
Right.
This makes them suitable for both clothing and upholstery.
So beet's a pretty versatile option.
It is. And in addition to sugarcane and beet, we're also seeing bioplastics being derived from cornstarch and cassava. So it's a pretty diverse range of plant-based sources that are contributing to this market.
It's good to see that we're not reliant on just one or two sources.
For sure.
All right, let's step back and look at the bigger picture again. What are the main factors driving the growth of this bioplastic textile market?
Well, the report highlights three key drivers.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, and we've talked about this quite a bit already, is the increasing demand for eco-friendly alternatives. Consumers are actively looking for greener options, and they're willing to pay for them.
Right, people are voting with their wallets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, we're seeing more and more regulations and policies being put in place that are specifically designed to promote sustainability.
Okay.
These regulations are encouraging the use of biodegradable materials, and they're really pushing companies to adopt more sustainable practices.
So governments are playing a role as well?
Absolutely. And the third driver is that growing consumer interest in making more sustainable and eco-conscious choices.
Right. That's been a big trend across many industries.
It has. And it's really having an impact on the fashion industry as well. So these three forces, consumer demand, government regulations, and that overall shift in consumer consciousness are all working together to really accelerate the growth of this market.
Those are some pretty powerful drivers, but are there any challenges or obstacles that could slow things down?
Yeah, the report does point out a couple of key restraints.
Okay, let's hear them.
One of the main ones is cost. Right now, bioplastics are generally more expensive to produce than traditional petroleum-based textiles.
That makes sense.
And this can make it harder for them to compete on price, especially in those fast fashion markets.
Right, yeah. Cost is always a factor. What's the other big restraint?
The other one is the availability of sustainable raw materials.
Okay.
We need a lot of those plant-based materials to meet the growing demand for bioplastic textiles. And scaling up the production of those raw materials to the level that's needed, that's still a challenge.
So it's not just about finding those alternatives, it's about producing them at scale.
Exactly. So addressing those issues, the cost and the availability of raw materials, those are going to be crucial for the continued expansion of this market.
Makes sense. So challenges aside, what does the future hold for bioplastic textiles? What are some of the key trends that you see shaping this industry going forward?
Well, one of the biggest trends is the increasing adoption of these eco-friendly materials across a wider range of applications.
So we're going to see bioplastics popping up in more and more places.
I think so, yeah. And we're also seeing a lot of really interesting advancements in the production technologies.
Okay.
These advancements are leading to some big improvements in the functionality, durability, and even the look and feel of bioplastic textiles. So they're becoming more and more appealing as alternatives to traditional fabrics.
Yeah, if they can match the performance and aesthetics of traditional fabrics, that's a game changer.
Yep.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about the competitive landscape. Who are the major players in this market and what's it like out there?
Well, the report describes the competitive landscape as evolving very rapidly, with a strong focus on sustainable innovation.
Okay.
So companies are really trying to outdo each other when it comes to developing and implementing sustainable practices and materials. We're seeing some big players like Patagonia, Adidas, and the North Face making significant investments in incorporating bio-based materials into their products.
So the big brands are getting on board.
Yeah, they are. But it's not just them. We're also seeing a lot of activity from smaller, more specialized startups.
Okay.
These startups are exploring the potential of newer bioplastics like PLA and PHA, and they're often coming up with really innovative solutions.
So it's a good mix of big brands and small startups.
It is. And we're also seeing more and more partnerships forming between traditional textile manufacturers and biotechnology firms.
Interesting.
So it's a real collaborative effort to drive innovation and scale up production.
That makes sense. Now, were there any specific investments or partnerships highlighted in the report that stood out to you?
Yes, there were a couple of really interesting ones from earlier this year. In June 2024, a bioplastics company called Florian secured a massive investment of 328.3 million US dollars.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It is. And their goal is to use that funding to expand their bioplastics technology, boost their manufacturing capacity, and broaden their range of materials.
So they're really going all in on bioplastics.
They are. And then back in February 2024, Balrampur Chini Mills Limited, a big sugar producer in India, announced a major investment of 238.5 million US dollars to set up India's first industrial-scale bioplastic production facility.
Okay.
And they're going to be focusing on PLA, polylactic acid. So these kinds of investments really show that there's a growing belief in the potential of this sector.
Yeah, those are some serious financial commitments. It definitely seems like the industry is gaining momentum.
Absolutely.
All right, let's wrap things up. For our listeners who are trying to get a handle on this rapidly evolving market, what are the key takeaways from our deep dive today?
Okay, to sum it all up, we're looking at a market that's projected to grow substantially over the next decade. And that growth is being driven by a global shift towards sustainability.
Okay.
North America and Europe are the biggest players right now,
Mm.
but the Asia-Pacific region is poised for the most rapid expansion.
Right.
Innovation in materials, particularly PTT and the rise of bio-based PA is going to be really important.
Okay.
And we're seeing exciting developments in the use of these materials, especially in clothing.
Makes sense.
Now, the increasing demand for eco-friendly options, supportive government policies, and that growing consumer interest in sustainability, those are the forces that are pushing this market forward.
Right.
But we also need to be aware of the challenges, particularly around production costs and the availability of raw materials.
Right. Those are still hurdles that need to be overcome.
They are. And finally, the competitive landscape is dynamic and evolving, with both big brands and new startups investing and innovating in this space.
So it's a really exciting time to be watching this market.
It is.
All right. Well, I hope that gives our listeners a good overview of the key trends and figures in the global bioplastic textile market.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground.
We did. So you should now have a better understanding of the major players, the materials, the applications, and the forces that are driving this market forward.
Absolutely.
It's an industry with huge potential, and it'll be fascinating to see how it develops over the coming years.
You know, when you think about all this growth and all the investment that's pouring into bioplastics, it really makes you wonder, what could the long-term consequences be?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, what could the impact be on traditional textile industries, the ones that rely on those petroleum-based materials? And what about our reliance on fossil fuels for the clothes we wear and the fabrics in our homes? If bioplastics really take off, could we eventually move away from fossil fuels altogether in those areas?
Wow, those are some big questions.
They are, and they're questions with some potentially huge implications for the future. Something to think about.
It is. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of bioplastic textiles. We'll see you next time for another insightful exploration of a topic that matters.
Sounds good.
Bye for now.
See ya.